Welcome to Future Ready Live. I'm your host, Tom Hood, and this is where we talk about topics that will help CPAs, CGMAs, finance and accounting pros prepare for change and transformation. Today, we're going to be talking about the future of FP&A, financial planning and analysis. And joining me is Chris Ortega, finance influencer, entrepreneur, BI and AI evangelist, and the world's top 10 voice in accounting, finance, and FP&A. What an honor. He's also the president and CEO of CEO Business Services and a senior director of global finance at Emersys. He podcasts for Collective. I just recently did a podcast with him, focused on using his passion, skills, and talents to help others achieve greatness. I just love that. Chris, say hello to everybody.
What's up, everybody? Hey, Tom, man, that was probably the best introduction I had. I'm really excited to be here with you right now, and I'm really excited to talk about the future of FP&A. Thanks for having me.
I love it. Well, all right, so I gotta start with a question about this. So, how do you become the world's top 10 voice in accounting FP&A? I'm impressed.
Yeah, so for me, this was a internal survey completely from my peers, all across the globe. This was done through LinkedIn. So it was a completely unbiased LinkedIn survey that just surveyed a lot of accounting, finance, and professionals. And that's where they were going in and looking at like the content and looking at the thought leadership that these people provide. And I was so lucky to be included on that top 10 list of accounting and finance FP&A leaders. It's a really tremendous list of some very, very impactful, influential, and thought-provoking people all across the globe. And I'm happy to make that list and happy to represent. And I'm looking forward to sharing my insights, my failures, and everything along the way around my FP&A journey.
Yep. So you and I met, I know now it's been, 3 years maybe at the AICPA, was it the CFO conference or the?
It's actually the FP&A conference. So I'm on the chair for that one. And I've been chairing that conference for, I think it's my 5th year now, being on the chair at the FP&A conference.
Awesome. Well, anyhow, I saw you speak and I was blown away. So I'm glad that we were able to reconnect and do all this. So first of all, I'm hearing this FP&A term all over the place. Like I understand it used to be about FP&A, the department, if you will, but I'm hearing CFOs, controllers, middle market, everyone's talking about we need this FP&A ever since the pandemic. So what's up?
Yeah, I think for me right now, what businesses are starting to see is the traditional FP&A has started off exactly how you started about this, right? It started off in its infancy as financial planning analysis, right? It needed for it to be for the people that were in the data, that were connecting to the insights, that were bridging down the data silos. They were providing the forward-looking KPIs of the business. They were, turning marketing data and sales data into operational data and connecting them. They were very, very, in its induction, very, very focused on the quantitative side of accounting and finance. And that was what the bridge was. That was what it was. How do you take kind of the history of the business question of what do we say we're going to do, which is traditionally accounting. What did we do is the accounting aspect of month-end close. But now it's really shifting to this next question is like, what are we going to do about it? And I think over the last 2 years and the pandemic and the situation that we're all in currently in some situations just really accelerated that to this next evolution of what I think FP&A is, right? And the second stage for me, I call it FP&A 2.0. It's really not the quantitative side of it. It's shifting FP&A to mean this: financial partnership and advising. That is where, it's really produced the partnership, the communication, the collaboration. It's really opened up a whole nother set of skill sets that accounting and finance professionals need right now, that are necessary, that really rose to the top as the cream of the crop in navigating through these challenging and difficult times that businesses continue to face. So that partnership and advising aspect, and that's where, it's kind of a stretch to ask a traditional, CFO to say, you got to partner inside the business. You got to go be a culture advocate. You got to go connect with, your people on all different levels, not just your finance organization. So I think to me, we're really moving into this secondary FP&A 2.0 phase that's really focused on a lot of different core competencies that build on top of the quantitative financial planning analysis, but really taking it a step further.
Yeah, well, you and I talked before. We came up with the idea of that T-shaped professional, and that's what you're talking about, right? We got to go horizontal, which means partnering across the business, which isn't an innate skill, right? You talked about collaboration, communication, critical from that perspective. I love the way you describe that. That's perfect. So another one is you've been a big advocate of data analytics. You've been kind of one of the thought leaders in that area. So tell me a little bit more about what can we do to get on top of this?
Yeah, so I think data analytics is just a really small subset of like that financial partnership and advising aspect. You got to have that down. You got to have your data. It's the foundation of any great high performance, high partnership FP&A team. But I think the skill set that is even beyond that complements data analysis. Like if you think about data analysis, right? Data analysis in and of itself, you can marry that up with financial planning and analysis. Like those two sound like they go together, right? Yeah. Now, the complement for FP&A 2.0, which is financial partnering and advising, is the art of storytelling around that data, right? It's one thing now to say you produce the numbers and here's the analytics, here's the variance analysis, here's what the key drivers are. But what is that storytelling to the business? Yeah. And this gets back to my point I mentioned earlier. Like right now, one of the most undervalued, but I think super valuable skill sets of those, top 5% finance, accounting, FP&A teams is the art of storytelling, right? And think about all the stories we know inside the business. We know that, hey, this sales cycle went this long. That was this amount of investment in, recruiting dollars, training dollars, customer acquisition costs that ultimately led to this customer that we had 5 years that gave us this amount of revenue, that gave us this amount of cash, that drove these kind of operational efficiencies. Like that's the thing about it. And I think that's a great segue and great point to talk about is because data analytics, you got to find those complements, right? Analysis, another complement around analysis would be how are you making sure that you having your people on a resource perspective? You don't want your people just churning and burning through analysis. Like who wakes up every day and just says, I am really excited to do analysis? Yeah, okay, it's okay if you actually wake up and do that, and that's awesome. But the complement to that in this FP&A 2.0 is like, I've done this analysis. How do I collaborate this? How do I spread this knowledge, right? It's one thing about making it scalable to the knowledge and the analytics and the analysis, but how are you informing the business? Yep. Another key complement to that is how are you teaching the business? Yeah. Yes. Now FP&A, accounting and finance, you're asked to enable and knowledge up the other lines of business. You need to have a sales, a marketing, a client success, a operations. You need to have those leaders knowing business. You need to have them knowing business, not just the sales business that they know, but connecting to the dots on the results. So to me, I think that's the way to bridge is find those core competencies in that FP&A 2.1. What are the core competencies that translate to that 2.0? Yep. Art of storytelling, collaboration are just two of those core complementing competencies.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking to a CFO of Walmart, and he said it's time now for what he calls the great join, that the CPA in the finance team has to join the business and the MBA side to really be able to connect all the stories of the business. And as you said, educate the business about what the numbers mean, because if they've got that down, you've got a whole, like you said, talk about capacity building. That's right. Huge. And I love the way you said that. I knew you'd have a great answer for that. All right, now I'm going to go. I know this is a big passionate part for you, but talk to us about the 3 Ps and what about them and why are they so important?
Yeah, well, to me, it's actually, I threw another one on top of there. And this is, I think, the core pillars, right? When I think about myself as, accounting, finance, FP&A leader, and think about leadership from my perspective, it always boils down to 4 key things: people, process, platform, and partnership. Those are really the key things, right? And to me, they're all building blocks on one another, right? Yeah. But to me, if to enable those people to say, Chris, where do I start? I was having a conversation with an awesome lady on the West Coast yesterday that reached out to me on LinkedIn and was like, Chris, man, I want to build a high performance and partnership FP&A team, but I don't know where to start. I said, first off, Start with your pillars in any high performance team: people and process. That's your foundation. That is your foundation level knowledge that you have to build, right? You have to make sure, and don't go hire people to say, oh, we need to hire a junior FP&A person. They need to have 6 years experience in SaaS. They need to have, these kind of things. Shift your whole mindset. Focus on the people aspect to say, you know what? What are the complementing core competencies that I need inside the business? For example, I know for me, I come up from the CPA route. I start off at Ernst & Young. I come up in the attention to details, and I was very, very in the debits and credits and T accounts and balance sheet reconciliations and in all of that. But one thing I've struggled at now is like the ability to go from here to attention to detail. So I know that that's a core competency that I can do, but that's such a hard flex for me. So to complement my team around core competencies, I want to have someone that has high attention to detail. So it's really about looking at it from a people and process perspective. That's your framework, right? And I look at it as building a house, right? You can't build a house if you don't have solid a foundation you're building it on, right? And that is boiled down to two of those pieces: people and process.
Yep.
The second part of it, and that second evolution of where you're starting to really build, is the partnership and platforms. Listen, I've seen this time and time again on the consulting side that I do. I've seen, Fortune 1000 level companies that I've had the opportunity to consult with. The fundamental flaw and mistake that they always make around those 4 Ps is they focus on the platforms first. They go look at the shiny technologies. They see the AI, the prescriptive, the predictive analytics. And listen, salespeople are great, right? They'll sell you on the dream, but when it comes down to actually implementing and executing it, where I see a lot of organization teams and companies fail is A, they don't have the people, A, they don't have the processes to scale the really ROI of that platform. They don't have that. So to me, out of the 4 Ps, that's the last place to start. Develop your people, make sure you have those core competencies, those complementing core competencies, those tactical strategic operations set up. Make sure you have very, very crisp, scalable processes that you understand, that are efficient and not ancient. I think so many times businesses rest on processes and procedures that they have for the last 30 years, and they say, Chris, why do I need to change? We've operated this way for the last 30 years. I always look at leaders and business owners and say, good luck, because in the last 2 years, business has changed more than it's changed in probably the last 100 years, right?
Exactly.
So to me, I think that's really the methodical and intentional way to get to high performance and get to high partnership, focusing on those 4 key pillars. And then that's where you can get your short term, your 6 to 8 months, your medium term, 8 to 12, and then your long range planning around those pillars.
It's funny. We've been doing a bunch of research on this, and we've had several of these LinkedIn Lives with folks that are confirming exactly what you're saying. And I was guilty of that too. I used to always go for the shiny object and put the technology in first. And yet what we're finding is, you're right, people and process. I would argue people, process, and their skills they need, right? We're finding out it's tool sets, mindsets, and skill sets. Tool sets is last. And but it's the same basic frame of what you're saying. Brilliant. This is brilliant stuff. I knew this would be awesome, Chris. This is all right.
Thanks, man.
Let's talk about this idea of technology. Let's go to the platform now. Technology automation, big impacts on us, obviously accelerating exponentially. I think our research says it's moved by at least 5 years in the last year. What do you think? How are they impacting us? And what do you think it's going to be? Are we going to all be subject to be robots are going to automate everything we do? What does it mean to you?
I love that question, Tom. I can't tell you how many times I've been talking, and I miss my public speaking days where we were having this conversation live at a conference somewhere. But that was always, listen, there's 2 key pillars, right? Human personalization does not scale anymore. We cannot, as finance, accounting leaders, continue to throw people to solve problems. We can't do that anymore, right? The second key pillar around that as well is when you look at how scalable technology is. Listen, to answer your question definitively, AI, machine learning, prescriptive and predictive analytics, they are not meant to take people's jobs, right? We are not getting into Skynet, Terminator days where, computers are making decisions and launching nuclear bombs or, posting this journal entry without it. My definition is when it comes to technology, right? Technology like AI and machine learning, the entire value proposition of that is putting the human element at the right moment and the most effective time to have that human involved, right? For example, you don't want to have your super talented, high performance, high performer, high potential FP&A lead person on your team churning and burning through Excel. Why? Have technology do that. Incorporate them on the real value proposition, the knowledge, the communication, the connection, the consistency inside the business. Again, incorporating that vital resource that you have, because let's be honest, right? Like, we don't have the luxury as accounting and finance leaders, and maybe some of you guys do, where you can just go have, infinity amount of headcount that you can get. Right. You got to make sure we're maximizing the resources that we have, and knowing that human personalization is, you can't scale that anymore. You can't throw people at problems. You've got to marry technology. And I think also the best thing for those top 5% of teams that are really leveraging AI and machine learning in different industries across the world, they're really focused on how AI and machine learning is scaling them, right? Yeah. It's scaling their knowledge collaboration. It's scaling their communication. It's scaling the ability and influence that they're able to have, which I think is so valuable. And AI and machine learning is all about, the last piece of it from the people perspective, it is all about upskilling, right? This is our moment. Like, I'm super excited to see organizations and teams leveraging these tools. Now they're upskilling, right? And when you upskill a whole value proposition of what you bring to the table, that takes the whole industry from, I've worked with leaders all the time, and they talk to me and they're like, Chris, I never worked with a finance person like you. And I'm like, well, I take that as a thank you, and I'm humbled by that. But at the same time, we need to make people like me, like, that should be like commonplace. Like, that should be your business partner. That should be your right-hand man. That should be your curiosity person. Like, we've got to change what this whole value proposition is around what it means to be an accounting and finance FP&A team, right? Right now, traditionally, it's like, hey, they give me the numbers. There's value in getting the numbers, right? But there's way more potential, way more impact, way more ROI that we can have when we're leveraging technologies to help put our resources in the right position and the most maximized efficiency that they can have. So right. For me, I think, that's a question I get all the time. AI is not going to meant to take our jobs. It's meant to put us in the right position to have the maximum impact and upskill our value proposition.
I love that. We have a whole model that says we go from, information to creating the reporting to impact and influence. And right, that's moving up the value chain. And that's what you just described. And I would say if we don't move up the value chain, there is a little bit of risk of being displaced if we don't continue to add value, right? I mean, that's the name of the game.
Oh, for sure. Like, and definitely during the time of the pandemic, right? You talk about there was so much rapid changing that had happened, right? And it continues to be our moment where chief revenue officers and sales leader was like, yo, we're going to take a back seat. Finance, CFOs, VPs of finance, like, you guys need to carry us through right now. Like, hey, here's the reins to everything. Finance get in the forefront. And my thing is about it is like, let's not make that a moment in time.
Right.
Let's not make that when we had our 15 seconds of fame and we were one hit wonder. No, we are here to stay. This is the value proposition. As we continue to open up and strategies change and things are evolving, we need to make sure we're in the forefront of rewriting what it means to be a CFO, what it means to be a VP of finance, right? What does that mean in terms of process and people and partnership and platforms? This is our moment. And I think this is a really transformative phase that we're in right now to really, really put our mark and our legacy that's going to like resonate 5, 10, 15 years from now on what it means to be an FP&A professional.
You are spot on, man. I knew you would be, but so the idea, right, is this is our defining moment. We came through this crisis. We were essential by definition in finance and accounting. And I think now is our opportunity to become indispensable. If we take this moment, seize it, and move forward, I think this is incredible time for all of us. I kind of wish I was 20 years younger or 30 years younger like you, because, when I was there, you couldn't, you spent all your time just trying to make sure daggone numbers were right. I couldn't even, if I was going to do budget analysis or forecast, it was in the middle of the night for the CEO, but it wasn't capable because the systems couldn't keep up. And now the systems are there or even advancing and be like, oh man, this is the time to have a ball, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think so many times, like just to piggyback off of that and ad lib with you on that, I think the struggle and a common misconception a lot of people have, and they're just like, Chris, I don't even know how to get started. Like it seems everything that you're talking about is like, so like 5, 6 years, 8 years from now. You're not. There are things that you can do around. Again, you gotta have a strategy, right? You gotta have like, okay, where are we at now? What is our baseline? Where do we want to get to? Yeah. Right. And I think that piece of it is establishing that baseline around where you at with your people, where you at with processes, where you at with your partnerships, where you're at with your technology enablement platforms. Really being honest, like not being that, person that's sticking your chest out and be like, oh yeah, we've got the best people and the best processes. Like really taking an honest look at yourself.
Right.
Because now once you take that honest look, now you can start implementing strategies in the next 3 months, tomorrow, right? One piece of advice I always give everybody: if you want to know the value you bring to your organization as a accounting, finance, FP&A leader, ask your senior leadership team, your CEO, your founder, your board, the senior leaders of your organization is, what is the value that I bring to you? Ask them that.
Yeah. And
they may look at you and be like, what do you mean? Like, well, when you look at me as a CFO of the organization, what is the value that I bring, right? Ask the CEO that, ask the COO that, ask the VP of sales. And if they say, you know what, Chris Ortega, you're really great in getting me the numbers. I mean, yeah, awesome. I'm great at getting you the numbers. But what you really want that leader, that executive, that board member, that founder to say is that there's not a business decision that I make that I don't consult and advise with my finance partner. Yep. That right there in and of itself, holy grail.
Yep.
Why is that holy grail? Because that shows that they look at you as a valued partner. They don't look at you as the number police and say, oh man, you keep track of the numbers and you tell me when I'm over budget. Like, no, like that shouldn't be the value prop, right? You want them to say, when it comes down to decision making, I consult my finance business partner. They're my right-hand person. They're helping me navigate good things. They're helping me navigate bad and everything in between. Yeah. That is really what you want to do. And you can do that now. That doesn't take, evaluating a Gartner report to see what the best-in-class technology. That is really establishing the baseline. And I think that's the first step of going down this transformation is you got to know where you're at. If you don't know where you're at, how do you know where you want to go?
You gotta have a vision of what you're trying to do, and you got to inform that vision with going to conferences, understand what other people are doing, and then bring that in and say, okay, here's what's possible. Now let's get moving there. But I mean, I think you had some great advice there from that standpoint. Let's wrap up here with a little bit on the skills. So what are those critical skills that you've talked about them a bit, but like, come on, you said, what would be the top 5 skills we need to go into the future? Give me some ideas of where you would start from that standpoint.
Yeah, no question. I think the first top 5 skills in that Finance 2.0 partnership and advising, first one, number 1, art of storytelling, right? Mm-hmm. And these are all going to be skills you probably didn't learn in business school. They probably didn't have, I never took a art of storytelling 101 in college or in my MBA classes. Last time I checked, I don't think that's on the CPA exam either, but that's a skill set you need, right? Number 1, art of storytelling. The second one, you have to be an active listener, right? And listen, too many times accounting and finance people listen to solve a problem and to give a solution. Stop it. Like, listen, like actively listen to people. Like, literally schedule meetings with your senior leaders or your business partners. Say, you know what? I'm going to schedule 30 minutes of time with you. I'm just going to sit back, listen to the challenge, the opportunities, how I can better help and serve you. Listen, actively listen, right? Yeah. I think the third other skill set, which is really, really, really near and dear to my heart that I've learned, is skills of the future. We have to be empathetic, data-driven decision-making leaders.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that, right? One of the most challenging, one of the like North Stars for me during the pandemic, and I'll never forget this, it was life-changing for me as a person, as a professional. every aspect of my life. It said, remember how leaders, organization, and teams, founders treat their employees and customers during this time, because it's a true reflection of their core values. We have to take empathy and that kind of aspect into our data-driven decision-making models. We have to incorporate that. We have to listen. We have to feedback. We have to absorb information and reflect that in our modeling, right? Because at the end of the day, the number one thing that we are at the front lines of impacting, at the end of the line, every plan, every scenario analysis, the impact is on people. Yep. And we are a lot of times at the forefront of doing that. I think the fourth key skill set that we got to have is we got to be great communicators, right? We got to communicate. And to me, I think it's over communication. I always have a meeting with my team and my global team that I have. And I have a section in our team meetings where it's called cascading information. And all we do is cascade information. Like I sit there and I'm like, you guys need to know this. You need to know this. You need to know this. This is things I need to know about. And it's not just accounting and finance. It's in the business. Yeah. I tell them about, hey, here's what's going on in HR. Here's what's going on in R&D. Here's what's going on in marketing. Here's what's going on in operations, right? You got to cascade and communicate. You've got to keep those lines of communication constantly open. And you got to feed communication as well as receive it. And I would say the top 5 skill set that for those future leaders that is really differentiators and financial partners and advisors is you got to be curious, man. Yeah. I think to me, like if I was to look at that list, if you were a great storyteller and curious just about the business, you're like 75% of the way there. Curiosity is so key. And the reason why that's so key is because it opens up a whole nother way of looking at things, right? It opens up to say, well, why is that lead number the way that it is? What are we doing? And it's usually a catalyst of marshaling people, right? Like sitting in a conversation with a sales leader and say, why do you think sales are so successful right now? Right. Like, that's like, wow, I never thought of it that way. Leads are really good, but why are leads that way? Right. Is there something you're doing in marketing? Is it, strategy that we're having? Like, what is it? To me, I think like when you look at those really top 5% accounting, finance, FP&A teams that are in that FP&A 2.0, those are the invaluable and key differentiating skill sets that I think you get focused on.
Love it. You're awesome. I think a lot of takeaway. We're going to write a blog post about this because there was like too many things in there to even begin to recap quickly. But I loved your extra P that you added. That was a classic to your 3 Ps. And then for more with Chris, follow him on Twitter and Instagram at CEO Future One. And thank you so much for joining me here. I want you guys all, listening audience, to know we'll be back on the first and third Tuesday of each month at noon Eastern. And Chris Ortega, no wonder you're one of the top 10 FP&A guys in the world. This proves it. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thanks, Tom. I'm humbled to be on the show, man. And thank you all you guys. If you guys want to look me up on anything, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Tom, thank you so much for the privilege and honor of sharing this time with you, brother.
Awesome. Same here.